In the midst of a raging snowstorm in Aspen Falls, a little girl's whisper pierces the icy silence. "Mommy's gone. Please save my brothers." Ethan Cole, a reclusive millionaire CEO, sits alone in his high-tech cabin, haunted by the ghosts of his past, unaware that fate is about to knock on his door. Outside, the wind screams, snow blankets the world, and a tiny figure emerges, trembling, carrying 2 babies in her arms. This moment, fragile yet powerful, will change everything, not just for the children, but for Ethan himself. In a world where wealth often shields, here is a story where courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond of responsibility triumph. Watch closely, because every second matters, every heartbeat counts, and this is the story of hope that refuses to let go. The storm outside raged like a wild beast, slamming against the sleek glass walls of Ethan Cole's cabin perched high in the Aspen Falls Mountains. Snow swirled violently, blanketing the world in a suffocating white silence. Inside, the cabin remained an oasis of order and warmth. The fireplace crackled with a precise heat, dim lights softened the space, and cedar-scented mist periodically filled the air. Yet, the order of the cabin was meaningless to Ethan, who sat silently in his favorite armchair, staring at a photo of his late wife, Danielle, and their daughter, Ava. Their smiles haunted him, frozen in a happier time, a reminder of what he had lost and what he could no longer touch. A chime suddenly cut through the stillness, sharp and insistent. Ethan's glass slid down as he frowned at the red notification blinking on the perimeter camera. Motion detected. His heart skipped. No one should have been outside. The nearest town lay 6 miles down an unplowed road, and the snowstorm had raged for days. He tapped the panel, bringing up the feed, first a blur of white, then the small dark figure of a child stumbling into view. Ethan's instincts kicked in before he could process. A girl, barely 6 or 7, wrapped in a thin blanket, no hat, no shoes, her tiny feet red from the cold. In her arms were 2 infants, swaddled together in a soaked fleece. Every part of him surged with the need to act. He grabbed his parka, shoved his feet into waterproof boots, and hit the front door override. The cold wind hit him like knives as the door opened, lashing against him and trying to drag him back inside. Ethan ignored it. Every step he took forward in the knee-deep snow was a battle, the wind cutting through seams of his coat, but he didn't hesitate. Coordinates from the motion tracker guided him until he finally saw her. She stood frozen, shivering uncontrollably, clutching her tiny charges, the storm biting at her skin and hair. Her lips trembled, and she whispered the words that would drive Ethan beyond any hesitation. "Mommy's gone. Please save my brothers." Without thinking, he crouched, wrapped the girl and the babies in his coat, and turned back toward the cabin. Each step was measured, deliberate, protective. The storm seemed to scream at him, trying to reclaim what he carried, but he pressed on. The cabin recognized their return, activating emergency mode. Heat surged from the floors, the fireplace roared higher, and lights adjusted to full brightness. Ethan placed them near the fireplace, unwrapping the children, feeling their icy skin against his hands, and wrapped them in warm blankets. Maddie, the girl, didn't cry. She simply sat cross-legged, wide-eyed, watching him. Her voice was a whisper when she finally spoke. "I buried her behind the house under the snow. I didn't want the babies to see." Ethan froze. The weight of the world pressed upon him as he realized the horrors this child had endured alone. She had kept herself and her siblings alive for hours in the freezing snow, improvising and surviving with nothing but sheer determination and courage. He administered medical attention to the twins, checking for hypothermia and dehydration, while Maddie silently observed. Every detail mattered: temperature, color of their lips, their breathing, the faint tremors that spoke of suffering endured. Maddie handed him a small USB, her tiny fingers brushing his, whispering, "My mom said to find someone who keeps promises." Ethan accepted it gently, aware that this small object held secrets far greater than he could yet understand. The moment was heavy, the weight of responsibility pressing down, yet there was a spark of hope, fragile but undeniable. The hours passed and the storm outside became irrelevant compared to the urgency within the cabin. Maddie and her siblings were alive because of him, and he had the power to protect them further. His instincts, long buried under grief and isolation, awoke with a ferocity that surprised even him. He was no longer a man hiding from the world. He was a guardian, a protector, and the line between duty and compassion blurred seamlessly. Every action, the adjustments to the thermostat, the careful placement of blankets, the administration of electrolytes, was precise, almost ritualistic, and entirely born of love. Through the night, the children slept fitfully, swaddled in warmth and safety. Ethan sat by the fireplace, gazing into the flames, the USB resting on the table beside him. Outside, the storm raged without mercy, but inside, a quiet determination settled over the cabin. Maddie's resilience, her ability to hold herself and her siblings together in the face of unimaginable loss, moved him deeply. She had survived alone, and now he had the chance to ensure she would never face that again. Ethan understood something in that long night, something no business deal, no financial empire could ever teach: the value of life, the strength of love, and the imperative of action in the face of helplessness. Each breath he took, each glance at Maddie, each careful adjustment of her brother's position on the rug, grounded him in purpose. He was alive for this moment, not for wealth or solitude, but for the fragile lives entrusted to him in the snow. As dawn approached, the storm lessened, but the magnitude of the responsibility had only grown. Ethan could feel it in every aching muscle, every tired eye, every resolve-filled heartbeat. He knew this was only the beginning. The world outside was a storm of dangers beyond frost and snow, a system that had failed these children, people who sought to exploit their vulnerability. And yet, within the walls of this cabin, a man and 3 children had discovered the first threads of trust, the fragile roots of hope. He looked at Maddie, still curled near her brothers, and whispered, "I've got all of you. You're safe now. I promise." And for the first time in years, he felt a crack in the walls of grief he had built around his heart. The storm outside was merciless, but inside, a new purpose had taken hold. He was not alone. They were not alone. And together they would face whatever came next. The morning light filtered weakly through the snow-laden windows, casting pale shadows across the cabin. Maddie sat quietly near the fireplace, her small hands clutching the 2 infants tightly, as if the warmth of her embrace could stave off the cold entirely. Ethan moved with practiced care, checking the twins, measuring fevers, and adjusting blankets. Yet it wasn't just their physical safety that weighed on him. Maddie's eyes, wide and unblinking, hinted at the truths she carried, secrets that could topple lives and reveal a darkness lurking just beyond the cabin walls. Finally, the girl broke the silence. "They'll come for us," she said, her voice flat, rehearsed. "The ones after Mom. The people who said we couldn't stay together." Her words were measured, yet every syllable carried the weight of months of fear and solitude. Ethan knelt beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Who's after you, Maddie?" he asked, keeping his voice steady, controlled. Maddie hesitated, then pulled a small object from a string around her neck, a USB drive, wrapped carefully in tape. Her fingers trembled as she handed it to Ethan. "My mom said to find someone who keeps promises," she whispered. Ethan accepted it gently, feeling the cold plastic against his palm, the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. This small device carried proof, evidence of the people who had hurt her, her siblings, and countless others. As he examined the USB, Maddie recounted the story of her mother's death, the neglect of her stepfather Derek, and the malicious guardianship of Valerie Knox. Ethan listened, silent but alert, each revelation tightening the knot in his chest. The girl had cared for her baby brothers alone for days, mixing snow into formula, holding them close against the icy wind, and ensuring they survived against all odds. Her courage was unyielding, but her vulnerability was stark. She had survived, yes, but not without fear. Not without the lingering shadow of danger. Outside, the storm raged on, indifferent to human suffering. Inside, the cabin's walls seemed to contract under the weight of truth. Ethan's mind raced. Valerie Knox was not just a corrupt guardian. She was a predator, a system exploiter. Every document, every whispered threat Maddie had faced, painted a picture of cold, deliberate malice. He understood now that the children's survival depended on more than warmth and food. It depended on action, strategy, and protection. Ethan moved with purpose. He activated the cabin's security protocols, ensuring that all entry points were locked and reinforced. Maddie watched him, her eyes a mixture of awe and cautious trust. "They can't come in?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Not while I'm here," he said firmly. Every muscle in his body tensed, prepared for what was coming. The world beyond the cabin was dangerous, but he would not let it touch them. Hours passed with an uneasy stillness. The children rested, Maddie occasionally rocking her brothers, her tiny hands surprisingly strong and steady. Ethan scanned the USB's contents, uncovering financial documents, falsified guardianship papers, and evidence of a network designed to exploit vulnerable families. The gravity of the revelations hit him. Valerie Knox had orchestrated a system of deception and theft, preying on the weak. Derek Lane, Maddie's stepfather, was complicit. This was not merely a case of negligence, it was criminal, systemic, and merciless. As the storm's howl intensified, so did Ethan's resolve. Maddie's bravery and steadfastness had sparked something in him that had long lain dormant: purpose. His grief, once a wall between himself and the world, became fuel for action. He would not let this injustice stand. The children in his care were now his responsibility, and he would protect them at all costs. Night fell, bringing with it the ominous presence of the outside world. Ethan surveyed the perimeter, knowing that Valerie's influence extended far beyond the mountains. Yet, inside the cabin, he had the advantage of preparation, foresight, and the unwavering courage of the girl before him. Maddie, despite her youth, had already demonstrated a wisdom beyond her years, a capacity for strategy and endurance that inspired him. She had survived alone. Now, they would survive together. As darkness settled, Ethan formulated a plan. He would use the USB to secure legal proof, to expose Valerie's crimes, and to safeguard the children's future. Maddie, sensing the shift in his determination, allowed herself a small sigh, a momentary release of tension. She trusted him, not because she knew him, but because he had acted decisively when it mattered most. In that trust, Ethan found a rekindled sense of connection to the world, a reminder that even in isolation, human bonds could forge strength. Through the long night, the cabin remained a Krauss fortress. Heat flowed beneath the floors, lights glimmered softly, and the children slept with a fragile security, cocooned in warmth and hope. Ethan sat nearby, reviewing every file, mapping every risk, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Maddie rested her head against her brother's, small hands, protective, silent, and resolute. She had led, in her own way, and now he would carry forward the fight. The storm outside would not abate, nor would the dangers looming beyond the trees. But within the walls of the cabin, a plan took shape, guided by courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable bond between protector and child. Ethan understood that the path ahead was fraught with peril, but he no longer feared it. Maddie's strength had ignited a fire within him, and together they would face whatever threats Valerie Knox could muster. In the quiet moments before dawn, Ethan placed his hand lightly on Maddie's shoulder. "We will keep them safe," he whispered. She looked up at him, eyes wide but trusting, and nodded. For the first time since she had entered his life, the weight of responsibility felt shared, and the sense of impending doom was tempered by hope. Outside, the blizzard howled, relentless and unforgiving. Inside, a new chapter had begun, one of courage, protection, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The wind outside howled with a force that could tear the world apart, snow slashing across the mountains like icy blades. Ethan Cole moved with precision, carrying Leah in his arms, while Maddie clutched Luke tightly. Natalie followed closely, her medical bag slung across her shoulder, eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of pursuit. The path down the back slope was treacherous, blanketed in snow and hidden dangers, but they navigated it with quiet determination. Every step mattered, every movement deliberate. The storm was relentless, yet inside this small group burned a fire of resilience that refused to be extinguished. The children were anyone, silent, exhausted from the ordeal, yet their presence demanded vigilance. Maddie, though small, walked with a steadfast resolve, the weight of her siblings in her arms, never compromising her balance. She had carried them through hours of snow and danger already. Now, with Ethan and Natalie guiding the way, she moved forward with renewed purpose. Each step brought them closer to safety, yet closer to confrontation with the forces pursuing them. Valerie Knox's influence was pervasive, and Ethan knew time was a luxury they did not have. Ahead, a familiar structure appeared through the trees, a half-collapsed shed, overgrown, yet precisely where it needed to be. Ethan led them to the hidden entrance, kicking open the door to reveal a dark stairwell that descended into the earth. Cold air rushed up from the tunnel, biting at their faces, but they pressed on. Ethan descended first, cradling Leah, every step guided by memory and instinct. Maddie and Natalie followed, the trapdoor creaking shut behind them, muffling the storm's roar. The tunnel, part of Ethan's off-grid prototype built years ago, now served a new, vital purpose: sanctuary. Emerging in the underground shelter, the group found a compact space lined with steel panels, solar-powered heaters, and minimal supplies carefully arranged for survival. It lacked the luxury of the cabin above, but it offered safety and invisibility. Ethan immediately set to work, laying Leah on the insulated cot, while Natalie unpacked her medkit, checking vitals and prepping antibiotics. Maddie remained standing by the heater, holding Luke against her shoulder, her small form steadfast despite the fear that had clung to her for so long. Heat filled the shelter, water filters engaged, and the battery-powered fridge hummed softly as Ethan powered up the main control board. The children's breathing stabilized, and the palpable tension in the air eased slightly, though they all knew the danger was far from over. Outside, Valerie Knox's operatives searched the cabin, moving methodically through the space above, unaware that their targets had vanished. Ethan's foresight and preparation had given them a window of safety, a moment to plan the next steps. Ethan inserted the USB into his laptop, the files illuminating the screen with evidence of financial fraud, forged guardianship papers, and a pipeline of exploitation that extended far beyond the children in his care. Maddie watched, silent but absorbing every detail. She understood, in her young way, that this small device held the key not only to their survival, but to justice for countless others who had suffered under Knox's hand. Ethan copied the data onto a second secure drive, his mind calculating risks, routes, and contingencies. Natalie observed quietly, providing reassurance and medical insight, her presence a stabilizing force amid the chaos. Hours passed in preparation. Ethan packed emergency supplies, food, water, thermal blankets, and the crucial backup USB drive, ensuring that every item served a purpose. Maddie, still clutching her brothers, allowed herself a brief moment of rest, trusting Ethan's plan and his unwavering commitment. The storm outside continued its relentless assault, yet inside the hidden sanctuary, a strategy was forming, a plan to outmaneuver Valerie Knox, protect the children, and bring justice to those who had exploited them. As night fell, Ethan and Natalie briefed Maddie on the path ahead. The hike to the communications tower, the relay of evidence to Monica Hale, and the safe arrival at a courthouse where justice could finally be served. The details were daunting, the risks immense, but they were necessary. Maddie nodded, understanding that her role, though small in stature, was pivotal. Her bravery had brought them this far. Now she would see the journey to its next stage, guided by the adults she trusted implicitly. The escape was meticulously planned. Every movement through the snow-laden forest was calculated, every pause measured to minimize exposure. Drone activity and footprints had to be accounted for. Any lapse could spell disaster. Ethan carried Leah, Maddie carried Luke, and Natalie provided support and vigilance, their teamwork seamless. The children's safety depended on coordination, foresight, and sheer courage. Each footstep was a silent act of defiance against the forces that sought to separate them, to erase the bonds that had been forged in adversity. Finally, they reached the hidden ravine, nearly 300 feet from the cabin. Ethan surveyed the landscape, ensuring no trackers or observers remained. The path to the comms tower lay ahead, 4 miles across challenging terrain. Maddie adjusted her grip on Luke, and Ethan's arm tightened around Leah. Natalie checked supplies one last time. They moved as a unit, silent, resolute, and determined. The storm outside was brutal, but inside them, The fire of survival and hope burned brighter. Hours later, the group arrived at the communications tower. Ethan retrieved the emergency relay from its lockbox, activated the satellite uplink, and secured contact with Monica Hale. Each step of the process was precise, calculated to minimize risk and maximize the chance of reaching a secure legal channel. The files were transmitted, evidence backed up, and the path to justice set in motion. Maddie watched quietly, sensing the gravity of the moment, understanding that their struggle had reached a pivotal stage. The night in the hidden sanctuary was long, but the sense of purpose it instilled was profound. The children slept, warm and safe, for the first time in days. Ethan and Natalie remained vigilant, their eyes scanning monitors, their minds alert to every possible threat. Maddie's resilience, the courage of a child who had endured the unimaginable, was a constant reminder that hope could thrive even in the harshest conditions. As dawn approached, the storm began to ease, leaving behind a world softened by snow, but still fraught with danger. Inside the sanctuary, the children awoke, secure and cared for, and Ethan felt a renewed sense of determination. The journey ahead would be perilous, but they had the tools, the plan, and the will to endure. Maddie, Luke, and Leah were more than survivors. They were the heart of a mission to confront injustice, protect the vulnerable, and reclaim a sense of safety and family. In the quiet moments before they departed the sanctuary for the courthouse, Ethan looked at Maddie and whispered, "We are not alone. We are ready." She met his gaze, eyes steady, and nodded. The storm had not beaten them. It had forged them, strengthened them, and reminded them of the unbreakable bonds of courage, love, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The courtroom was silent, heavy with anticipation, as Ethan, Cole, Maddie, and the twins stepped inside. The weight of this storm they had endured, the peril they had faced, and the courage they had summoned hung in the air like a palpable force. Every step echoed across the marble floor, a rhythm of determination, of justice about to be served. Valerie Knox sat across the room, her composure impeccable, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. For the first time, she faced the evidence she could not manipulate, the truth she could not deny. Maddie clutched Luke's small hand, Leah cradled safely against Ethan's chest, her tiny breaths steady and warm. This was their moment not just for survival, but for vindication, for recognition that their lives, their bonds, and their future mattered. Monica Hale and the state prosecutor presented the files, the digital proof, and the sworn affidavits that exposed Valerie's predatory guardianship scheme. One by one, the layers of deception unraveled. The room seemed to hold its breath as the judge reviewed the evidence, the weight of responsibility balanced with the urgency of justice. Ethan's gaze fell on Maddie, her small frame, radiating a quiet strength. She had endured more than most adults could imagine. She had protected her brothers, navigated fear and despair, and entrusted herself to someone she barely knew, with faith that he would act. And he had. The promise she whispered through chattering teeth in a snowstorm had been kept. Every sleepless night, every calculated risk, every measure of warmth and care had led to this defining moment. The judge's gavel struck the sound block, echoing through the room with finality. Charges were confirmed, arrests imminent, and the children's legal status secured. Relief washed over Maddie's face, a small smile tugging at her lips. Ethan exhaled, a tension he hadn't realized he carried slipping away. They were safe. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, they were truly home. Outside the courthouse, spring air greeted them, crisp and renewed. The snow had melted, revealing soft earth and new growth. Ethan walked with the children, their steps unhurried now, each footfall a quiet celebration of resilience, courage, and the human spirit. Maddie's hand remained in his, a small tether to the man who had kept his promise, who had transformed from a recluse burdened by grief to a protector, a father figure, a beacon of hope. Back at the cabin, now filled with warmth, laughter, and life, Ethan watched as Maddie and the twins explored, their innocence returning, nurtured by safety and love. The crayon drawings pinned to the refrigerator, the stack of board books, the handmade rocking chair by the window symbols of life restored, of family rebuilt, and of a future untainted by fear. The past could not be changed, But the present, the life they shared, was theirs to shape. Sometimes, courage comes in quiet moments. Sometimes, it arrives barefoot in the snow. And sometimes, it transforms a broken man into someone capable of love, protection, and justice. This was their story, a testament to resilience, trust, and the power of promises kept. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the Retold Stories and join us for more tales of hope, courage, and the remarkable strength of the human spirit. Every story matters, every life has a voice, and every promise can change the world.